Chiropractic is useful for so many different things. To lump it all into the painkiller bracket is just to do it a serious disservice. While it's very, very good at alleviating pain, sciatica, neck pain, headaches, it's very good at relieving the symptoms of these conditions. It's so much more than that. I'll give you some examples.
My experience was with my mum, in that she was under chiropractic care, and she was in a really bad way, could hardly walk, was virtually in a wheelchair, was told by doctors the only route was surgery. She didn't want to do that because of all the possible outcomes of permanently being paralysed, etc. So as a last resort she went to a chiropractor. Saw the amazing change in her, unbelievable even to this day. Can't believe still how much she's changed. And one day my youngest was really poorly, got really, really bad cold and just really wasn't himself. And Mum said to me, just get him down, do the chiropractors, let him have a look at him. And so that's what I did. I went down and said, can you look at him, can you see if you can do anything? And it just all kind of rolled on from there. Got him sorted, then I went in, and Tom went in, and then we got Edward in.
The whole family.
A 5-year-old boy who came to see me, his name was Blake, and he had pretty severe behavioural problems. He couldn't sit down for very long, he was fidgety, he couldn't concentrate, he was prone to mood swings, he couldn't control his temper, all the classic signs of ADHD. And his mother brought him to me not because of that, because just the whole family was getting adjusted. She wanted me to check him out. And I said, yeah, no problem, let's adjust him. We adjusted him, and within a month, the teacher, Blake's teacher, reported a 70% improvement in his behaviour. Those are fantastic results for ADHD. Now, am I saying I can cure ADHD? No. But if there's nerve interference, a person cannot concentrate. They do not have good control over their body. They do not have good control over their brains. So chiropractic can help in those situations when there is interference in the flow of information. I'll give you another example. I had a 9-year-old boy, Brandon, who came to see me. His mother, once again, was seeing me, said, you know, Brandon's suffering with these balance problems. He can't ride his bicycle without stabilizers. He's struggling with walking over a log on the way to school. The rest of his friends can walk across this log over a river. He can't do it. He has to walk around. And it's embarrassing for Brandon. So she brought him in, and within 2 months, Brandon could ride his bicycle without stabilizers. And that is, for a little 9-year-old boy, that is phenomenal. You know, he was over the moon, Mom was over the moon, and they had never thought about chiropractic for him. They didn't know it was a chiropractic issue.
What did they bring him in for?
She brought him in because I mentioned to him, his mother, that if the atlas is out, it interferes with information going from the brain to the body. And I was measuring her balance. She was saying, well, you know, my son doesn't have very good balance. And so I suggested she bring him in, and she was absolutely right. His balance was appalling. And I adjusted the atlas, and his balance came right, because we've got the instruments to measure that. And yeah, it was brilliant. Yeah, very, very exciting. And then, of course, we have little babies. We had a little 2-week-old little baby. Mom brought her in. I wasn't breastfeeding on the one breast because couldn't turn her head over. Her name was Freya. And so once again, a simple atlas problem. Something in the birthing process. It was a natural birth, so none of the risk factors you normally see, like von twos, forceps deliveries, and caesareans. None of those risk factors in there for spinal injuries. It was a simple natural birth, but the baby was just too long in labour. And he was getting a bit squashed against the pelvis, and it sent his atlas out in her atlas out in one direction. Adjusted the atlas, and baby could feed on both breasts. And she got through that first growth spurt in about 6 weeks, with the usual sore nipples, but she was feeling a lot better, and baby was feeding, and you know.
Well, that's what kind of happened with Chad.
Yeah, that's right.
He wasn't feeding very well.
Yeah.
And then he started adjusting his jaw and his atlas. Was it his atlas?
It was his atlas, yeah.
His atlas, and suddenly it wasn't sore anymore. Well, not like it had been.
Now Chad got adjusted at a day old. The only reason I didn't adjust him in the theatre
Wasn't theatre.
in the delivery ward.
It was a natural birth.
It was a natural birth, of course. The only reason I didn't adjust him then and there is because there were a lot of people around. Some people feel a bit self-conscious about chiropractors. So we got him home, and I could see he was out. He had one eye small, his skull was slightly twisted to one side. The signs were very, very obvious to me as a chiropractor. And adjusted him, and his eyes, remember, his eyes leveled up every time I adjusted him.
It was amazing.
Yeah. So, yeah. And every time he cried, I would go small again. So the atlas went out again, adjusted it back, boom, skull went back to normal. If I hadn't seen it in my own child, I would not have believed the power of chiropractic.
Who was the chiropractor that said that if ever there's a breastfeeding problem, they must come straight to a chiropractor?
That was Steve Williams.
Oh, that's
Dr. Steve Williams. And then there was Barry. Talk about back pain. Barry had been diagnosed for 20 years with degenerative disc disease. He had unfortunately suffered with some throat cancer. They had to go in and perform surgery which cut away half of his lower jaw, in fact his whole lower jaw, cut away half of his throat and half of his chest down here because the cancer had spread down into the lung. He was pretty severely disfigured. He couldn't control his saliva, he was drooling all the time, and so it was embarrassing for Barry to go out in public. He loved gardening. He loved making things grow, but he couldn't garden because his back pain was so severe. He'd be able to garden for an hour and then he'd need to rest. Barry came to see me on the recommendations of a friend. He told me his story, degenerative disc disease. And when I hear degenerative disc disease, I'm pretty sure, because I've seen it so often, that the GP hasn't done his homework. And I was right in this case. He was misdiagnosed. I gave him 3 adjustments. He was feeling better. Within a month, he was able to garden for a whole day with only taking a break at lunchtime. Still had some backache, but nothing like what he had had before. He comes in regularly every 2 months, gets adjusted, because he understands that he's getting wound up. His stress pattern is that his back gets tighter, and he feels that tightness coming in there, gets adjusted, gets it released, and off he goes again. Fantastic guy, and really, really happy outcome for him. But unfortunately, 20 years worth of misdiagnosed lower backache, which we were able to help. And then there's Ella. Ella. Yeah, you know about Ella.
I know about Ella. Ella, bless. They were so excited with what had happened that they, for Christmas, gave Chad the most amazing little fine truck that he loves and plays with all the time.
Ella. Mom, once again, just asking me about chiropractic, thought, well, maybe chiropractic could help a little girl. Her little girl couldn't talk. She was about 2 years old at the time. She had some brain issues, but she was born without an eye. It's called anophthalmia, and it's a relatively rare condition. But the way that they do it usually is that they put a false eye in, and then every time the skull grows, they'll replace the eye and move with the growth like that. And they can get the child looking pretty normal just by doing that. Unfortunately, when there's no eyeball growing in the skull doesn't grow as quickly on that side. And so the skull really was all squashed down on that side. And Ella was, from what I could see, couldn't complain about it, but was clearly suffering from headaches. She must have been for that kind of change to take place. And very ratty, very grumpy. Obviously, when you're in pain, that's how you are. Mom brought her in. Within a week, the eyeball that she had in popped out and they replaced it. We adjusted her for another month. They had to replace the eyeball again because the skull was catching up so quickly now. and she used to tell her mom when to come in and see me. She used to rub her side of her, because this is one of the bones I would adjust. She would rub the side of her head like this, and her mum would then know to bring her in to see me, and I would then release the skull, headache would go away, and Ella was like a different child.
And she started speaking.
She started speaking, she started making sounds, and it was absolutely amazing. A really, really big change in Ella. Yeah, she's one. Stella came in to see me. She had really bad neck pain, and she was struggling to help her husband. Her husband had Alzheimer's and so needed 24-hour care. He couldn't put his own shoes on, he couldn't do anything, really. And was also suffering with what they thought was a pretty serious knee complaint. But because he couldn't explain it properly, the consultants took an x-ray of the knee and said there was no problem. But back to Stella, she couldn't look over her shoulders, she couldn't drive the car, she was just very desperate. Because she was thinking at this stage that she would have to put her husband into care. And that was just inconceivable for her, because he was still very, very conscious, very aware, and it would have destroyed him. So she came to see me. She was an NHS manager, and she was a bit skeptical, but she was willing to try anything. Within 2 weeks she could look over her shoulders. Her headaches decreased. Within 2 months she was fully functional again, no problems helping out her husband at all. She then brought Sandy in. I discovered that his knee problem was a hip problem. And I don't know what these guys test for, but his knee problem was a hip problem. I treated it as a hip problem, and Sandy stopped complaining about his knee. They're able to do bowling now together. They're living a full and healthy life, and they come in regularly. I think Sandy comes in every 2 weeks, and Stella's on every 3 weeks at the moment. As happy as can be that they're able to live these normal lives now, in what was looking to be a very desperate situation. And that's what chiropractic can do. It can do all of these. Well, let's talk about you. I mean, you had back spasms.
Yes.
I think it was virtually every second night.
Yeah. I used to have such bad back spasms that, and somehow it was always when I lay on my back, and I couldn't turn over, I couldn't move. And the only way to get out of the spasm was to go on all fours and kind of curl up.
Yeah, I remember.
And
I remember having to roll you.
Yes, I used to have to,
couldn't move.
Yeah, I used to have to wake Andrew up, and he would roll me over, and then I would wait for the pain to release. And it was after a car accident. Somebody jumped a red traffic light, and hit the side of my car, and affected, I don't know, lower back somewhere. Yeah. And it was excruciating. It used to be quite terrifying to go to sleep. I just can't believe that kind of pain exists. Yeah. And yeah, it's only because of